Recap. A chance meeting on a train brings two strangers together in a city that seems to belong to them alone for one night. I am the woman who narrates what happens when curiosity turns into conversation, and conversation turns into something neither of us expected. We wander cobblestone streets, share coffee and confessions, dance under strings of lights, and touch on fears we have long kept private. As the night deepens, our easy closeness cracks into a sharp argument that lays bare different ideas about life and loyalty. The argument forces us to ask whether a single perfect night can bridge the realities we hide. This is a story about connection, choices, and the fragility of moments that feel like destiny. Keep listening to discover how one night can leave a lifetime of questions. Chapter 1. I never expected a stranger could feel like a beginning. It was late afternoon when I climbed onto the train that carried me toward the city. A city whose name I barely remembered from a map and a cheap guidebook. I had my own small, unremarkable reasons for going. A gallery I wanted to see a day with no plans. He was there before the station's smell of engine oil had faded from my clothes. Sitting by the window, a book open, and an expression that balanced curiosity and tiredness. We spoke because it seemed natural. The conversation started with a joke about the train's unreliable schedule and slid into where we were headed, which led to stories we told in clipped rhythms, the kind friends used to test the tone of each other's voices. He had traveled light and with a laugh that arrived unexpectedly soft. By the time the countryside blurred and the city lights began their distant glow, we had agreed, without the formality of a plan, to get off together. The station was colder and wetter than I expected. A light rain clung to the cobbles, and everything reflected lamplight like a promise. We stood under the station's old arch, and I felt the first of many small tensions that would later make sense. The way he looked at me when I laughed, how he hesitated over the map as if deciding whether the map or the city would guide him. He introduced himself with a name like a question. I answered in the same way. There was no false ceremony. Just two people easing into what felt like an unspoken agreement to share the night. Chapter 2. Walking across the bridge as night pulled its curtain over the river. The city felt like a soft secret. We talked as if we were releasing small balloons into the dark. Facts about ourselves, favorite films, childhood embarrassments. In the hush between the lamps, his voice sounded different, as though the night air made everything more honest. I told him about the apartment I'd left behind, about a job that was more habit than calling. He told me about a childhood spent on train platforms and a fear of staying in one place too long. Conversation is intimate when it is unplanned. It unfolded in fits and starts, in silences that felt like punctuation. We found a narrow alley lined with bookstalls where the smell of paper and glue seemed to lean toward confession. In a tiny cafe with cups steaming and a playlist soft as a heartbeat, we traded stories about who we were and who we pretended to be. My hand brushed his when I reached for a sugar packet, and the touch was both ordinary and electric. We danced later in the night in a small square where a violinist played under a street lamp. It wasn't formal dancing. It was the kind of swaying that happens when two people agree to move in the same rhythm. People watched, smiled, and then went on. The city allowed us anonymity and intimacy at once. I began to imagine the possibility that the night might not be only an accident, that perhaps accidents can become something else if both people lean in. Chapter 3. The cafe became our refuge that night. It was the kind of place with mismatched chairs and framed black and white photographs on the brick walls. We sat close enough to hear each other's breathing, to read legible rhythms across the table. He told me about odd jobs he'd taken to learn new cities, the kind of background labor that teaches you how to read people quickly. I told him about my fear of sleeping without letting the curtains all the way open, a useless ritual meant to protect me from surprise goodbyes. At one point, in the hush after the violin, we stepped into a museum courtyard that was open and quiet. Moonlight warmed the marble and made the fountain look like a mirror for thoughts. There, he admitted something I didn't expect. A reluctance toward commitments that felt like promises he could not keep. I listened, and the admission sank into me like an unexpected tide. There were small, golden moments, an underpass where he brushed my sleeve with a nervous hand, a street vendor who offered us roasted chestnuts when we had no cash, the way he laughed at a bad joke that I pretended to find clever. I felt the night gather us together like a story in progress. None of it seemed rushed. Rather, it felt like two things aligning slowly until they matched. Chapter 4. Late into the night, when a hush settled and only the river and distant cars made a sound, tension arrived without ceremony. We had been talking about future plans, small practical things at first, and then something sharper. How we imagined where we would be in 5 years. When his answer hinted that he might never put down roots, something inside me flared. I loved the idea of movement, of lightness, but it had to be shared. The night that felt like possibility suddenly demanded a direction. The argument wasn't loud at first. It was the sort of argument that begins with disappointment and grows teeth as both people try to protect the thing they care about. Words that had been cushioned by laughter found edges. I accused him of being afraid of responsibility. He accused me of wanting someone to stay for the wrong reasons. We said things about loyalty and fear, and whether a single night could be anything more than a good story the next morning. We left the bench and walked without speaking, footsteps loud in the gaps between us. Later, on a rooftop with the city spread out like a map, we tried to find the language for what had happened. He looked at me with a softness that suggested regret, while I felt hollow and furious and tender all at once. The argument had exposed different truths, and both of us were left holding them like fragile objects. Chapter 5. Dawn softened the edges of everything. We found ourselves at a small bakery just as the doors opened, buying something too sweet for the hour and sitting on a bench with crumbs between us. The night's argument had not been resolved fully, but the light made our faces forgiving. We talked about small, vital things, favorite childhood memories, the smell that made us homesick, the songs that made us cry. He bought me a cheap bouquet from a market stall with a shy grin that seemed to say he wanted to apologize without the weight of words. There was reconciliation in gestures, an offered umbrella when the sky looked uncertain, the way his hand found mine and didn't withdraw. Not because all the questions were gone, but because sometimes closeness is an answer that buys time. I found myself surprised by how safe I felt despite knowing how fragile the night still was. It felt like a pause, an acceptance that two people could care enough to try even when the future was unclear. Chapter 6. The morning at the station felt like a horizon I already knew how to mourn. A single suitcase stood between us like a punctuation mark. We walked the platform together as the first train cleared its throat and the day breathed in. He looked at me with the kind of calm that comes from someone who has decided and wants to be gentle about it. I looked at him with the kind of hope that could not be sterilized by logic. We spoke in low voices, trading the small practicalities of a goodbye as if that might soften whatever required the hardest choice. The train arrived with a hiss and a sigh. There was a brief embrace in a carriage as sunlight painted his face in lines. Outside, the platform felt suddenly huge and empty. I will not tell you here what choice was made and how it shaped what came after. That is a detail you'll have to discover in the final scene. What I will say is this. The night made something between us that was unrepeatable and important. It left me with a new map for how to hold other people's truths and my own, with a sense that sometimes one night can change the way you move through quiet days. No matter the decision, the memory of that night, the sound of his laugh, the roughness of his scarf, the way he looked at the city as if it held private secrets, stayed with me. And that's a kind of love too. A love that is not always tidy or permanent, but that is honest and alive for the moments it occupies. If you enjoyed this story, please subscribe to the channel, activate notifications, give the video a like, leave a comment with your thoughts, and share the video with friends who love romantic stories.